sandwiches, ice cream, coffee and snacks, and many other pleasing treats. Our foods are fresh and tasty, our drinks satisfying and refreshing. They're so good.
Welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In.
And now, on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In, episode number 78. And for those of you who are regular listeners of the show, this is the first interview-style episode Average Joe's Drive-In has had in about 5 or 6 weeks, I believe. I've been having some internet issues, which was causing it to be very, very difficult for me to actually do them, as a lot of my interviews are done via Skype. So it was making life very difficult for me. And I finally, after like 2 years of dealing with this, got this all straightened around. So I'm glad, the money I pay for my internet finally got taken care of. And with me this week is author Peter Dudar. He is the Bram Stoker Award-winning nominated author of A Requiem for Dead Flies and the Solstice Award-winning novella Where Spiders Fear to Swim. Born and raised in Albany, New York, Peter settled in Maine in 1995. He's been writing and publishing fiction ever since. He's a proud member of the New England Horror Writers and a founding member of the local writing group, the Tuesday Mayhem Society. His latest novel, The Goat Parade, was released in February and is now available in trade paperback and on Kindle. Peter lives in Lisbon Falls, Maine, with his wife, Amy, and their 2 daughters. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing wonderful, Thomas. Thanks for having me on the show.
Not a problem. I've been meaning to get you on for a little while, so this is finally good to get you on. We've had to reschedule a few times, but we finally made it happen.
Yep. It'd be much better to meet you in person, though. For both of us in Maine, we should find a reason to get together.
Yeah, I'm one of these weird recluse people. I don't travel a lot. I hate driving, so I don't travel very far unless it's something kind of near me. And it's like I keep meaning to go to some more events downstate.
Now, you're up Limestone way, right?
No, I'm up in Milo. I'm kind of in between Millinocket and Bangor.
Okay.
So
that's not terrible.
I'm pretty much smack dab in the middle of the state. But yeah, I don't usually travel too far for events and stuff, so I don't often meet a lot of other authors from there. I actually just met Morgan Sylvia last week, and her and I have talked for years, and she actually dates one of my best friends and former bandmates. So
oh wow, see, I didn't even know that.
And I've never met her before in person, so we met each other at the Slayer concert a couple weeks ago, and so I finally got to meet her, and it was like, it's like we've been talking for years, and this is the first time I've actually met you, so.
Right. Now she's actually in the Tuesday Mayhem Society with me, so she's a very dear friend.
That's part of the reason.
That's really cool.
That's also part of the reason I mentioned that, because I knew she was a part of that. So, tell me a little bit about the Tuesday, before we get into your writing stuff, I want to know a little bit more about the Tuesday Mayhem Society, because I've never really been part of a writer's kind of consortium or group, or whatever you want to call it, like that, where you guys get together physically and actually do stuff.
Well, it's very much a critique group where we get together when we can. It used to be weekly, but we kind of fizzled out weekly just because, everybody in our group has lives and everything. But we meet at least once a month, and we get together, we read what we're working on so we can get some feedback, whether it's making sense or if it needs changes and everything. We do book sales and reading events at libraries. And we actually organize something called the Psycho-Social, which is a group meeting event, in bars in between Portland and Lewiston and everything, where other people can come in and hang out with us and get to know us, and it's very cool. It's a very social group. So
yeah, and I'm sure face to face it's a little more I want to say comfortable and easier to express what you're thinking, because I find a lot of times doing it over social media or even on the phone sometimes can be a little or messenger or text or whatever, can be a little impersonal sometimes. Maybe the way you're meeting something doesn't quite come across the same way, or, whatever. Because you lose those, inflections and stuff in your voice. And, at least I find it always kind of impersonal doing it, stuff that way.
Right.
And getting, critiques and
the reality is we're all introverts to begin with. We're much more comfortable, when we're home behind our computers where we don't actually have to look at people when we talk and everything. So part of the main reason we started the Tuesday Mayhem Society is because, first of all, we need to learn how to read and project our voices when we're doing reading events. So it's a way to build your comfort level, very slowly.
Yeah. And
then we started doing the library readings, which has made a vast difference in how each of us perform our reading events. So,
right.
But yeah, the social aspect, it really is a lot easier. Getting there is the hard part because you always build it up in your mind that, I don't really belong. Do I really want to do this and everything? But once you're there, it's a lot of fun. You have a few drinks. You learn what other people are up to. There's a lot of networking going on. You can get good advice from people who have more experience than you. It really makes a lot of sense to do these events. So.
Oh, definitely. I know even from just doing like some of the Comic-Cons and different events that I've done with other writers, that it has, it usually gives me a little bit more of a kick in the ass to finish whatever projects I'm working on. It keeps me more motivated. It also inspires me to see, all right, this person just put out this awesome book right here, or this person did this, and it kind of creates a snowball effect, I guess, with everybody
motivator.
there.
Absolutely.
It's such a great motivator. And I always said that, when I was, doing the band stuff and playing music, that when bands start to play shows, the more shows they play, the more motivated they get because it's almost, it's kind of a reward for all the practice and all the, people get excited and you get to see other bands play, and then you're like, oh, well, there's things I can improve on, and blah, blah, blah. And it creates a snowball effect. And that really seems like it's kind of the same idea.
Well, it really is. I mean, between authors and musicians, you win fans over one at a time. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah.
So, getting yourself out there and putting the effort, and when one person goes to a show and loves it and they tell another person how much they had a good time, it really does accumulate. There's a snowball effect, like you said. And it's great because the people who read my books and, discover me this time around, go back and reread the stuff that I've written in the past. And so, you constantly build moving forward. They go back and find your back stuff too.
Yeah.
And it is rewarding.
Oh, definitely. I've had a few people that have purchased books from me or whatever, like at events, and a year later when I do another event, I run into those same people and they want to buy some of my older stuff or something they hadn't read because they were like, I really enjoyed that. So it kind of opens up a door. They were like, well, I told my cousin about that and I gave so-and-so my copy of that book to read. I hope that's okay. And I'm like, yes, it is. I was like, I don't mind you, giving your copy that you bought to somebody else to read because maybe that will make them a fan and then they'll buy something and so forth. Yeah. Some people get kind of weirded out about people giving stuff away that they've written. I've talked to a few people that don't like that because they get more into the mindset of, I lost a sale because this person gave your book away. I look at it more.
Oh, if you're doing this to get rich quick, don't bother. Don't waste your time.
This is I think I'm on my 5th or 6th year now of writing, and I certainly haven't I might have broken even by this point, but that's about it.
No, there's definitely a rush, especially when you get feedback from people. They might not have bought your book, but just hearing that, hey, this book really kept me entertained and I really enjoyed it and made a difference in my life, that's a great thing,
Oh, yeah.
So
that's also, it's another thing that's a good it motivates you.
Right.
I find reviews in general, whether they're positive or good, tend to be a great motivator in one form or the other, most of the time. Sometimes they can be the Debbie Downer that kind of sets you back a little bit, and you're like, man, I'm just going to stop writing because apparently I suck pond water worse than any humans ever, suck as far as being a writer.
The best advice I've ever gotten, you don't check every day. You don't check on Amazon to see what new reviews are coming in because that can be a downer. It can be distracting. Unfortunately, you're going to get bad reviews at some point. They come in, especially, I've noticed a lot of the bad reviews I get, they appear to be from other authors who seem really frustrated that you're successful and they're not.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Oh, that makes absolute sense. And sometimes, especially earlier on when I first really started putting stuff out, I was so guilty of checking the reviews every day and waiting for a new review. And, I'll be honest, I went into it knowing very little about what I should be doing. I didn't have a lot of guidance, and I probably put my first book out way sooner than I should have.
Now, did you self-publish?
Yes, I self-published.
Yeah.
I've always self-published. I've never really wanted to go the publisher route for, personal reasons, but, it's one of those catch-22 things for me. Like, I've wanted to submit stuff, and at the same time, I also don't, because I don't want to get bogged down into having a time frame to get stuff out. And
deadlines
are a pain in the ass, especially if when you have a full-time job, a regular job on top of things, and it's not your bread and butter. So I always have had the mindset that if I can find success as a self-published author, then maybe if it comes time, I can take that next step, but maybe do it a little more on my own terms,
Right. Well, the thing about the small press is that, first of all, I love the small press. I am published exclusively in the small press. And it's one of those things where the people who are the publishing houses that are out there, they're putting out quality books. And that's one thing you have to really respect, is that they take the time, make sure everything is perfect, typeset and formatting and the cover art. Everything has to be absolutely beautiful. But by the time they're done with that, they have no money to promote, for promotional stuff. And a lot of that falls back on you.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. I've been around the block a few times. I know what I'm doing. So you have to build this kind of as you go. And I can't imagine what it's like when you're self-published, because all the responsibilities must fall on you, obviously.
Oh, it does.
And I have to tip my hat, but at the same time, I'm very wary that people who do self-publish tend to get frowned upon by people who've been working in the business for a long time, because it seems like you're not paying your dues, and that's a very unfair judgment to make.
Yeah.
But, you have to take the rejections and learn from them,
Right. And I get that. Like, in my personal, personal experience and case, I stopped writing for years as far as writing stories or screenplays or anything like that, when I was doing music, because I was doing band stuff. I just didn't have a lot of time to do it. I always enjoyed it, but when I got done doing band stuff about 6 or 7 years ago, when I kind of really decided it was time for me to hang it up, and I'd gone, as far as I could with it, and I'd done more than I ever thought I'd get to do with it. And, it was just like it was getting to that point where real life and that was starting to overlap and be too difficult. Right. And, but I'm a person that needs to constantly have something creative to do.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's safer to chase one muse at a time anyway.
Yeah. Because
you don't want to get overdrawn and overextended and wear yourself out.
Oh, exactly.
But, I could totally see dropping the writing stuff if I could find something else that would be as satisfactory as the writing is for me. I'd like to take a break from this for a little while if I could. The problem is I just haven't been, I used to play guitar years and years ago, and I'd have to relearn from start if I sat down and tried to pick it up all over again. And that doesn't seem like a worthwhile investment to me. I see no, gain from doing it.
So. No, there's no money in music whatsoever. Like most arts of any type these days, there's not a lot of money involved in the arts, because, I don't know, I've personally, and this is my personal opinion, and it's not what I feel, but I think people as a whole devalue the arts compared to maybe even 15 or 20 years ago. There seems to me like there's less value placed on them, especially in a monetary sense. There seems like there's less value placed on whether it be music, movies, writing, artwork itself, poetry, anything. It seems like people just don't.
Well, you know what the problem is? The problem is at this point, people follow trends. They're afraid to find something new on their own. So if they can watch America's Got Talent or, The Voice, and they can all vote together on someone they really love and find a unity in that, they're not going to run off and go to concerts because they get it for free, first of all.
Right.
And second of all, there's safety in the numbers. Hey, this is what everybody loves, so I should dig it too. And the conformity that's going on right now is really scary and really sad.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I'm dating myself age-wise here, but when I was a kid, when I was first getting into music, I would buy albums solely based on, cassettes, solely on the cover art, not knowing anything about the band because it was cool looking. And
Boy, that's so true.
Some of my favorite bands that I still listen to this day, I just saw 4 of them 2 weeks ago that I'd never seen.
Yeah.
I saw Anthrax, Testament, Slayer, and Napalm Death. And I've been fans of those bands since before middle school, truthfully.
Right.
And part of the reason I got into half of those bands was because of cool artwork.
Right. Now, I have to ask, how old are you?
How old am I? I just turned 40 last Friday.
Okay, so I'm a bit old. I'm 46. But yeah, it's the same thing for me. I remember growing up and, the albums were still prevalent, the record albums. And I can remember buying Iron Maiden for their artwork. I can remember...
I bought No Prayer for the Dying, strictly based on the artwork, and Iron Maiden is one of my top 5 favorite bands of all time. So,
Peace of Mind is a great album.
Such a good album. Power Slave, anything by Maiden, I
But you're right. I mean, that's when they actually took a lot of pride in the product they were putting out. They took the time to get the artwork right, and the liner notes that went with it, you could get all the song lyrics and about the different songs. They would tell you all this different information. That it was an experience. Now it's just you can download any song you want at any time you want, and there's no magic to it. There's no waiting for a release date. There's no
no personal investment in it. Before that seemed like a thing. You were plopping down. For me, it was like, all right, I started working when I was fairly young because my family had a business. But even before that, I mowed lawns and did other things to earn money.
Yeah. Oh, I'm right there with you. That was me too. I had a paper route.
That $10 that I had to go buy a tape, I would sit there for 40 minutes trying to pick something out.
Now, do you remember the first one you bought?
The first tape I ever bought?
Yeah.
That I actually bought with my own money. I believe if it wasn't No Prayer for the Dying, it was Master of Puppets by Metallica. I think was the first tape I ever bought.
Yeah. Mine for me was Rush. It was Moving Pictures. And I remember because it was back, I bought it from Strawberries Records and Tapes. And I can remember the day I went. I miss it too. They used to have this plastic wall with holes in it. You'd have to pull the tape out, drop it on this conveyor belt. So that's how they kept you from stealing it. And the conveyor belt ran all the way to the counter and everything. And it was such a big deal. And I remember that first time I went in for money I had from, it was probably from mowing lawns. And I went in and I bought it, and it was like the greatest day ever. And I listened to that tape until the ribbon wore out.
Oh, yeah, I've had a few of those tapes that, I played so much you couldn't read the lettering on them anymore.
Yeah.
So you had to do something so you knew which tape was what, because there was actually nothing on them. It was just basically a blank cassette case with no wording.
Yeah.
But,
it's funny, back when, do you remember the whole Napster thing when Metallica got all mad and tried to sue them?
Yes, very much so.
My take on that was that, well, first of all, I had all of Metallica's, stuff on tape. I already paid for the right to listen to that music, and you sold me a defective tape. So I have no problem downloading for free, when I've already paid for it. Why should I have to pay a second time? So there was a lot of holes in their argument to me,
I agree. This is a weird gray area with me because I feel very much the same way as you. I bought all of Metallica's albums on CD. I had them all on cassette. So what was the big deal if I downloaded them all so I could have them on my computer in MP3 form?
Right. And at some point, greed does take over from common sense, and that's too bad because, these are the kids that when they're buying your music, even if they're just listening to it on the radio, they're going to go see your concert and pay your concert shows,
But I also understood what they were saying is there was a lot of people that weren't doing that were just, that were just basically pirating their music and blah, blah, blah.
Right, and that's understandable too. It's a double-sided coin.
But looking at the way the music industry is now, it has ruined in a lot of aspects the ability for bands to actually, like the experience we had with a tape of going and buying a new tape or an album or whatever, and having that full package. Bands don't get to do that sort of stuff now and actually make a living off it. I have friends. Let me finish here real quick. I have friends that are professional musicians that tour all over the world. This is their job, that have to come home and work regular jobs because they can't make enough money off an album sales, and now because the record companies make no money off album sales, they take percentages of the band's merchandise sales. That was the bread and butter, you know.
Yes, but you got to also understand the pendulum has swung the other way at this point, because back in the late 80s, early 90s, you had acts like Aerosmith and AC/DC getting paid millions in contracts by Sony and whatever distribution companies they had. They were getting just so much money that they actually had to charge way more than the product itself should have been charged for. You should not have had to pay $18 to buy a CD back in 1989, 1990. And now the backlash is, well, you know what, if you're going to charge us that much money, we can get it for free. You know, why wouldn't we? So, unfortunately, it was just bad decisions on the business end of it. You know?
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like I said, it's a double-edged sword because I discovered a lot of bands that I became fans of that way in the Napster days. You know, that I went out and bought their albums to support them and such, but not everyone did that, and that did put a lot of those mid-tier type bands that were good bands that were just barely scraping by. A lot of those bands, you know, that I know, like, I'm a fan of, especially in the metal genres, have gone by the wayside because they can't really afford to do it anymore because they don't make enough money to actually be able to go out and do it, because the little things that kept them afloat and able to do that are gone now. You know, it's like anything. I mean, it has its good and its bad points, and I don't.
And there certainly are success stories out there. You got guys like Kid Rock. That guy started his whole thing selling CDs out of his trunk, and he built an empire on his own. And that, you know, that he deserves every bit of success that he gets because he really paid his dues.
Oh yeah, you hear of quite a few. You know, I can't name them right off the top of my head, but I know there's 2 or 3 really popular hip hop artists that have done that. That's how they got their start, was basically selling albums out of the trunk of their car. You know, Godsmack was another band, I believe, that kind of did that.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Yep. But, you know, it's just, I think, more than anything, like I said earlier, I think it's just art in general, no matter what it is, has become devalued societally. You know, it just doesn't, people don't place, because everything is so disposable now, like it's disposable now. People don't hold on to things. They don't collect things.
Right.
You know, everything is digital. Everything is whatever. Which, again, I'm not saying that's bad, but at the same time, I think it's a gray area, you know.
Well, you know, from a consumer perspective, speaking just for myself, I know that a lot of the albums that came out after 1990, I realized I only liked 1 or 2 songs off these albums, and the rest were all disposable songs anyway. Right. You know, there's very few bands that you actually can sit down and listen to the album start to finish and love every song. They're so rare at this point. I like having the option that I can find the songs I like and pay 99 cents, $1.29, get those songs, and, you know, I'm not going to worry about the cover art at this point because, you know, like I say, they just don't put the effort into it anymore. So.
No.
But I think if the 13-year-old me that relished taking those pictures and hanging up by my locker at school or putting posters up in my room, that part misses it. You know?
Oh yeah, drawing the symbols of the bands on your book covers.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, but my whole fear is not just music-wise, but even in books, I feel like that same thing has happened, where because with the advent of self-publishing, again, it's a double-edged sword. I think, in my opinion, it's great because it allows anybody to you know, who writes a book a chance to put it out there and maybe find some success. And you know, on the other hand, it's also allowed anybody who writes a book to go out there and put it out. So.
Yeah, that's very true. But you know what? It's one of those things, if you're out to build a serious career and build your name as a brand and find a respectful, you know, your respectful place in the whole, you know, genre, you really have to try to submit short fiction and get your work out in anthologies and magazines where people can read them and discover you. And then, you know, what you sell afterward is just your growing business.
I know, this year for me, that's been... You know, because like I was saying, it took me a really long time before I kind of found writing again. And I really, in like the last year and a half or so, I finally feel like I'm in a good enough spot where I can write good material to put out for, you know.
Right.
I'm not saying that I don't think anything I wrote was good, but I feel like I'm at a level now that I don't feel so nervous about, you know, sending in shorts for anthologies and magazines and stuff like that. Granted, I'm like 0 for 6 this year, but whatever. You know, I've gotten good feedback on the majority of the stories I sent in, and it was just more along the lines of, you know, this wasn't the right story, or it was too similar to other stories, and there was something better than yours, you know, type deal, or whatever. But it's been both good and bad, because this is the first time that I have gone out I put myself out there on a limb like that to submit stuff, I guess. So, you know.
Well, you know, it's funny. You need time between writing and going back and revising to rebuild that objectivity you need. You need to have time away from a project and come back to it to see where you were going correctly and where things fell apart, you know. I know at this point in my career, I can look back and read stuff that I wrote 20 years ago, and I instantly know who I was reading at that time, because I obviously was trying to emulate those people until I found my own voice. But I also know what worked and what didn't, and I could actually go back and straighten a lot of those stories out and make them sellable now. So
and I mean, I don't ever throw anything away, because I always think there's value somewhere in a story. So even if I don't ever publish it, like you said, I might be able to go back in 5 or 10 years from now and look at it and be like, holy crap, there was a really good idea there that I just, at the time.
Oh, yeah, you can go back and mine your own material,
and at the time, I've had that happen with several novels or novellas that I've started, where I thought the idea was great, but at the time, I just didn't know how to execute it or where to go with it, so I kind of put it on the back burner, and I've never gone back to it. And I keep saying to myself, one of these days, I'm going to go back to this and look at it, and I'm going to have that epiphany moment where it's like, I know what to do and where to go with this, and, you know, then I'll be able to finish it. But
Well, you know, you really serve an apprenticeship when you do this job. You have to spend the first couple of years, you're going to emulate the writers that you read all the time, because that's what you know. And then you're going to hit that one story where you find your voice, and it's going to make all the difference in the world. You will know how to go back and fix your mistakes from that point on. You will know those moments when you're on fire and just things are coming out faster than you could actually type it. I don't know if you ever had that feeling before.
When your brain is so far ahead of your fingers. Yes.
Yep. And that's a lovely feeling, man. That's so rewarding.
Oh, yes. Those are those moments where it's like, I'm not going to get up and stop, because if I do, I'm going to lose this momentum. And then I don't care if I've had to pee for 30 minutes. I don't care. I'm going to keep going, and just, you know, you sit there and just go and go and go. And, you know, another thing is, wow, I'm having a complete brain cramp right now. I was just gonna say, you know, you find your voice. I think you find your voice in weird moments where it might not necessarily be on something that pertains to what you normally even write. Like for me, I released a nonfiction book last year. And called Confessions of a Boring White Guy, for anybody that is interested in checking that out. You can find that on Amazon.com/author/Thomas Washburn Jr. or just go to thomaswashburnjr.com and there's a link to it. But
hashtag
shameless plug. Got to get them in wherever I can. I don't do it that often, so you know.
Oh, it's totally acceptable. Don't even worry about it.
So anyway, when I wrote that, it was just because I was very kind of getting frustrated with my fiction writing at that point. Like, I wasn't... My first book that I put out, for me, I felt like it was fairly successful. And on a personal level, you know, maybe not to other writers, but for me, I thought it was very successful. And since then, it seems like I've just had a steady decline, even though I feel and I seem, from people that read my stuff, like my writing has gotten better. You know, so it's, I've been really frustrated. I've been really frustrated with it for about the last year and a half. So.
Yeah. And there's a lot of truth to that, because I know for myself that, I lost my train of thought too.
One of them days, it's the heat, you know, it's the humidity.
It is the heat. The heat is miserable. I was gonna say, I'm totally drawing a blank at this point. I apologize.
That's okay, but I can kind of keep going a little bit on this. And, you know, so I was very frustrated with that whole thing. Like, it's like I'm writing stuff that is way better than that first stuff, but nobody seems to be paying attention to it.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Isn't that so funny that I know when I write a story and I think it's brilliant and amazing and someone's going to buy it right away, those are the stories that never seem to sell. The stuff that seems formulaic and I wasn't really trying as hard as I could have, those are the ones that get snapped right up. and I can't for the life of me figure out why that would be.
My last fiction work that I put out was called Normal, and you know, I've been proud of everything I've written, but like that one, I sat back when I was done and like, I just wrote the thing that I'm gonna probably be known for as a writer. You know what I mean? Like I had that moment where I felt like this is gonna be what people are gonna start to notice my writing for.
This is the game changer.
This is gonna be the game changer. And I have sold maybe 70 or 80 copies of that book. You know? And I'm like, I don't get it. Because everybody that's buying it that I have run into has told me how much they love that book, and they bought other books of mine off, you know, me afterwards. But like, that's not translating into online sales. That's not into other things. So I just feel like the book is stagnant. I don't know. It's a really weird thing. Like, physical sales at shows are great, but when it comes to online sales, it's not translating, you know?
Well, just going back to Amazon and reviews in general, you know, it's good not to look at them, but at the same time, you know, these are one of those things, it's one of the metrics that we rely on to tell whether something is successful or something's not so great. If people are reading your book, you have to urge them to please take 2 minutes and post a review, even if it's just, you know, a couple of stars and saying something good about it. That way other people can read it and discover, you know, if it's worth checking out or not. You know, you feel bad because you're like, you don't want to pander to people and beg them for their help, but you know, if you want to be successful, these are the keys that you need to succeed.
Oh, absolutely. So. And you know, I try once in a while just to say, hey, you know, if you read any of my books and you enjoyed them, you know, just leave a review. And what I hear from a lot of people is they're intimidated to write a review, if that makes any sense.
It does, because, you know, there's a difference between writing a review and writing a critique. And a lot of the people who post on Amazon don't know how to write a critique. They only know whether they liked it or not.
And it's very basic, and a lot of times it's very, instead of pointing out why they don't like something, well, this just sucked, I don't like it, this is the dumbest thing I ever read. Well, why was it the dumbest thing you ever read, and why did you think it sucked?
And they can't articulate.
You know, I had one woman that left a review because I did the cardinal sin, apparently, of writing. In my first book, The Returners, a dog gets killed. Spoiler for anybody that hasn't read that yet.
Oh, that's a no-no.
The dog gets killed in a heroic manner, saving his best friend. You know, it's during a zombie apocalypse, and they've wandered together, and he saves his friend. And the guy's very attacked.
It's fiction.
And it's fiction, but I had a lady leave a review told me that she basically hated the book because I killed the dog. And it's like, ma'am, this is a work of fiction. Nothing really happened, you know, but it's like, I'm not going to argue with somebody about that because you're not going to change their mind.
You know, one of the worst troll reviews I got was some woman who was complaining that she didn't understand why everybody else liked the book and she didn't. And so she gave me 1 star and went on and on.
I would have had a hard time not answering to that one, just because you have really shitty taste. You know, because that's the type of person I am, and I'm, you know.
Well, my feeling is if you truly did not enjoy the book, I apologize. You know, there's nothing much I can do to change that and fix it for you. But, you know, when you're giving 1-star review, you're taking away from our livelihoods. You are damaging our careers by doing that. And people don't seem to understand that.
I don't think most people understand that when they leave a review. You know, Average Joe's Drive-In, while I do interview episodes like this, I also do movie review episodes. And even when I absolutely loathe a movie, I try not to just shit on it for no reason other than I hated it. You know,
because people put their heart and soul into it.
As somebody that writes and, you know, a musician and this other stuff, I understand what goes into doing a creative project like that. You don't always hit it out of the park, you know? And as I always say on the show, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. Just because in my opinion it sucks, that doesn't mean it's going to suck to you or somebody else. You may love it.
Right.
But what I always... You know, and something I always try to tell people is, you know, if you find there's like a certain reviewer or there's a certain podcast that when they give a review that they don't like a movie and you tend to be on the same page, listen to those people because you guys have similar taste. Now, if there's a podcast or a reviewer or whatever, whether it's movies or books or anything, that you are constantly, being disagreeing with, do just the opposite of what they tell you, because you obviously have different tastes. Because it's opinions, right. They're exactly that. They're opinions. They're not set in stone.
Right. But at the same time, I mean, it makes a difference between a literary reviewer giving a critique who knows how literature works, and you can actually, dissect what they're telling you and make sense of it and just decipher whether the book is going to be good for you or not. I tend to not rely on people who say, oh, this book kicked ass, because, who knows what this person likes in real life anyway.
Oh, exactly. And I think, as a writer, I also, when I look at reviews, I tend to look at just in the same manner, I tend to look at the reviews of people that actually seem to know what they're talking about and not kind of the same idea. While the 1 and 2 word reviews are good because it gets the book exposure and the ratings and all that.
Right. Yeah, there's some algorithm that they use to help boost sales and promote the books.
But somebody that takes the time to write a 4 or 5 paragraph review and why they like the book and stuff, I'm going to read that 90% of the time.
Oh,
because
absolutely. Even if there's spoilers, I'd rather have someone who knows what they're talking about.
And usually, I find really good reviewers can write a review without spoiling it anyway.
True,
not all of them, but some of them. And that's something I try to incorporate in my own, in the podcast. And when I do reviews, I really try hard not to give spoilers, but also give the listener a general idea of what I did and didn't like about the movie, like the technical aspects or the performances or whatever. But story-wise, I might say, well, the story was okay, but it was more of an effects masterpiece, or vice versa, or whatever. And I think anybody that's a good reviewer can do that, get their point across without ruining anything. And if they do need to give spoilers, they'll put some sort of a warning saying, hey, there's spoilers in this. So read with with your own caution. Yeah,
it's still there. Okay,
I just ended my thought. So,
well done, sir. Well done.
So we're already, these go by really quick most of the time, and we really haven't even gotten into your writing. So Bram Stoker nominated, which that in itself that's a big deal, man. That's a really big deal.
It was a big deal, but I'll tell you, it was a very weird situation, because that was my first novel. I got nominated for a debut novel for the Bram Stoker Award. And I was so worried that, are these people overhyping this book? I didn't think that book deserved as much success as it got. It was my first time out of the gate as far as long fiction. I'd published a bunch of short fiction before then. So then all of a sudden it's like, well, if everybody loves this book, then, I have to deliver an even better book next time around. And I got so worried about the sophomore jinx because of it that I didn't put out a novel for about 5 more years. I put out a couple novellas and a lot of short stories. It wasn't like I wasn't keeping busy, but in the back of my mind I was always worried about the next book meeting up to the standards of the first book. So it really can play on you psychologically.
Now, for those, can you tell, some of my listeners may not be as familiar with literary awards and stuff as we are, but can you tell my listeners, can you explain to them what the Stoker Award actually is?
Absolutely. The Bram Stoker Award is the annual award ceremony that's held by the Horror Writers Association. They have a process where you can recommend books, and they come up with this huge reading list. And around February of every year, they take the list and they compile it and break it down to which one's got the most nominations. And I think they also take into consideration a lot of the officers can make recommendations to help get books on the list that might have been overlooked. And from there, they whittle it down to a final ballot, and that's around, I think, March or April. And by June, they have the award ceremony. By then, everybody can vote on what their favorites were, and they tabulate all the votes, and the winners win.
And for those of you who may not be horror people, the Stoker Award is named after Bram Stoker that wrote Dracula. So
yes.
Most famous for Dracula.
And it is a very prestigious award, but I know there's also a lot of criticism based on how it is presented. I know they've gotten a lot better over the years with the HWA, how they put it together and how nominations are done. But I know there's also a lot of unhappy authors who might not have won who make accusations towards the HWA saying that it's not fair, it's based on popularity versus the product itself. And it's very unfortunate.
I hate to tell anybody that, but any award ceremony is a popularity contest. I don't care what it is. To some degree, you know, but if you look at like the Grammys or the Academy Awards or any of those, there's a lot of times where people win, not really based because but again, this falls into an opinion thing. So.
Right, and I certainly don't want to speculate because I'm not a member. I haven't been a member of HWA since probably 2000. I was a member when I first got started, and I used it towards networking and building up a social, group to help promote my own stuff. I outgrew it very quickly and ended up just not renewing my dues, and I stopped. So, but I also know that there are other awards like the Shirley Jackson Award, which carry a lot more weight and gravitas towards how successful a book really is. Those are the ones that I tend to look at more. But yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have won the award. I would have loved to have a little statue of the haunted house.
That's a cool little caveat to have, right there. Now, but you did win a Solstice Award, correct?
I did. The Solstice Award, I should be upfront about, is run by a blog reviewer. And it's not like it's this big, organization that puts it out. It's one person who, reads hundreds of books all year long and picks out her favorites, and she presents the award every December, I guess. So that was a nice feather in my hat, just to say, hey, somebody really appreciated this and put it out. And, I put it in my bio just to make me look good, but, I also take with a grain of salt that anybody can look at that and say, well, the Solstice is just one blogger's, opinion.
But from a personal opinion standpoint, anytime somebody recognizes you for your work, it's a nice feeling. I don't care if that's one person or 1,000 people or, what.
And that's how I felt when I went to the Bram Stoker Award for A Requiem for Dead Flies. I was sat in the room. I was so honored just to have people look at my book as, look at me as a peer author. That meant more to me than actually winning the award because it felt like, hey, at least I'm getting the attention I feel. I've been working in the business for about 15 years up to that point. So just to have people recognizing me as, I finally fit in, that was really, really, flattering. It felt really good.
Oh, anytime you get recognition from your peers and some acknowledgement, that it definitely makes you feel like, to some degree, like I made it.
Yep. Oh, I did. I was so honored to be there.
So you have a new book that came out this last year, which I have a copy of, and I'm sorry I have not had a chance to read it yet. But my backlog of books is horrendous right now.
Oh, I know the feeling. I just came back to Nikon with about 58 books that are not even getting to my to-be-read pile because I've got a huge pile next to my bed waiting to be going through.
I do too, and I'm so behind on my reading, and I've just been taking a break. I'm really weird when it comes to reading. Like, I will devour book after book after book for like a year or two, and then I won't read anything for 6 months to a year.
But you need it. You need to fuel your muse and give yourself some new material to think about. You should not read books with the idea that you're going to go ahead and write a better story. You should read them just to kind of renew your sense of love for the craft and learn how other people are doing the same thing you're doing.
What I've been reading, when I have been reading stuff, is short stories and anthology type stuff where I can read like a story and then I don't necessarily have to go back and read, because I'm going to lose my place. I can read a story and then not read anything else for a week or two or whatever, because I'm one of these people, like, I like to stay busy, so I have the podcast and I have my own writing stuff that I'm doing and I have my, personal life stuff and my regular job and just, and I'm a movie nerd. I love movies, like, more than, that's like one of my favorite things is movies. I don't watch TV until hockey season and football season starts, but, I don't really, but I've always got something that I'm doing. So a lot of times when it's time for me to go to bed, I just want to sleep. I don't want to read. I don't want to.
Right. Well, I work the night shift, so I know exactly how you feel. I'll come home and try to start reading a book just to kind of let my mind, relax. And 5 minutes later, I'm sound asleep, and then I have to go back and reread everything that I was reading before just to refresh my memory.
And especially this time of year, in Maine when it's warm and it's nice and you want to go do stuff and you're more active, I guess. At least I know I am. I do way more this time of year. when it starts to cool down and things start to slow down, that's when I start really tending to devour books.
Right.
So, now, what's your new book about?
My new book is a contemporary version of the story of Faust and making a deal with the devil. It has 3 protagonists. One is a second-generation Delta bluesman who had sold his soul to the devil for talent, and then, of course, the devil screws him over and he spends his life in jail. And the book begins with him leaving jail, and old Scratch comes back and says, "Hey, I know where your guitar is if you want to find it," and sends him on this mission to recover his guitar. There's another character named Svetlana who is an illegal immigrant who comes into the nation from Eastern Europe, and she's a street performer. She performs, acrobatics and that kind of stuff and everything. And she also has this gift called the omniscient eye, which allows her to, when she touches people, she can see immediately into their past and into their souls. She can't see their future, only their past. And it was a gift that was given to her by Satan in disguise. So she has that ability. And the third character is a down-and-out crime beat reporter who's battling alcoholism, has lost his family, through divorce, and he's ready to change. He's ready to give up the job, anything just to get him away from what he's doing now. So he's on the verge of making a deal with the devil just to kind of find that peace of mind that he's looking for. And in the meantime, the antagonist is a Satan-worshipping, Charles Manson-esque type villain who has this, cult and this harem of women. And he comes into the city and he begins his crime spree, and he's expecting the crime beat reporter to report on it. And of course, the crime beat reporter has his own issues that he's working through, so he's been ignoring it. And the crimes get worse and worse and worse. And by the end of the book, it's a battle between good and evil.
It's a classic tale as old as mankind itself. Man.
Yeah.
You can't beat it.
Yes.
And not to compare everything to Stephen King like I so often do, but I think that's why so many of Stephen King's books work. Because everything Stephen King writes generally is, at its core, a battle of good and evil.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he has certain tropes that keep repeating themselves over and over again. Obviously, telekinetic children and anything related to the Dark Tower series. They just keep. There's a lot of Easter eggs involved if you keep reading this every book.
A lot of a lot of his books. It's basically about secrecy in small towns and how small towns are. Keep secrets. That every little town you go to, especially in Maine, and I'm sure it's like this everywhere. But they all.
And the fact that people are the worst monsters.
There's a lot of skeletons in closets that get hushed up because of certain things or whatever, who that person is or who that person's family is or et cetera, et cetera. And I think he does a fantastic job of exploring that.
Brilliant.
There's a reason he's been doing it and putting out 800 books a year for, 40 some odd years now. So we can all only aspire to have that type of success,
Well, you know what? Having that type of success, though, is very limiting for the fact that he's lost his personal identity and his anonymity. That he can't really go anywhere without being Stephen King,
true.
And that to me is kind of scary.
I'll tell you what, I've met him a few times back, long time ago, and I used to live right down the road from him. I ran into him a couple times. He is one of the most genuinely nice, average, everyday people I have ever met. He's very, very polite,
cool.
Very kind. Just, I ran into him at a grocery store, and I can't remember if I've ever told the story on the show or not, but a little convenience store I used to stop into every day on my way to work. I used to work nights, and I stopped in, and he was friends with the owner of the store because I believe the owner of the store coached a local high school football team. So he used to go in there because it's literally like him and Tabby used to walk around the loop down past his store every day. And I was in there and I had my New England Patriots jacket on, and it was during football season, and he said, "Hey, geez, how do you think the Patriots are going to do this week?" And I was just like, I had one of those holy shit moments where it took me a second to be like,
yeah, it had to be really surreal.
Good. I felt like such an idiot after the fact, but that was like my interaction. Like, he wasn't like, "Oh, I'm Stephen King, look at me, I'm better than you." Like you would see him walking, he acts and dresses like everybody else. And the dude is a very kind philanthropist. He gives a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't talk about it a lot. Unless you're from this area, I don't think people really know how much he does for Maine in general. But, as far as this, him and Tabby are very, very kind-hearted people when it comes to stuff like that. And it's just but I understand what you're saying. I mean, he is so recognizable that even if you're not a huge fan, you know who he is.
Right. I mean, it's not just the writing, but the whole pop culture thing. The fact that he's so, ensconced in making movies, and he was writing for Entertainment Weekly for a while, and he's definitely kept busy over the years and keeping himself, in the spotlight.
Have you read any of Joe or Owen's stuff?
I have. I've read both of them. I've read Owen put out a collection called oh God, the name escapes me. Oh, we're all in this together. And he's not really a horror writer as much as he is kind of political satire and
Doesn't he
drama.
kind of write some old school noir stuff type too?
Yes, he does. Yes,
stuff, yeah.
But that collection was sensational. And at the same time, he wrote the book with his father, Sleeping Beauties. And I was not enamored with that book. I didn't finish it. I put it down halfway through. But yeah, he does some great stuff. And Joe is terrific as well. I read The Fireman. I read 20th Century Ghosts, and Heart-Shaped Box was fantastic.
I loved Horns. I loved Heart-Shaped Box.
I've got Horns, and I've got his new the novella one that just came out. Strange Weather, I think it's called. I've got it in my to-be-read
I was just talking with a friend about that the other day,
and
he's like, it's really good. It's different because the stories are different from one another, but he said it's really good. I have The Fireman. I still haven't read that yet, and I still haven't picked up a copy of 20th Century Ghosts. But I absolutely adored Nosferatu. That was...
I see. I haven't read that one either. I
such a good...
I guess they're making it into a movie.
A miniseries.
Yeah.
I believe it's a miniseries,
okay.
Yes. But...
I hope it's on Netflix, because I'll tell you something. It'd be nice to get an undoctored, uncensored, version of the story.
It is so good. He reminds me, I mean, I'd like to get your opinion on this because you've also read stuff of his. He reminds me a lot of his dad, the way that he writes, but he definitely has his own voice and way of doing things. And
absolutely.
I really enjoy his
fact that he... The fact that he changed his last name, to Hill and tried to get published without letting people know who he was says a lot about his character.
I'll be honest, if you've ever seen a picture of him, it's pretty hard not to realize whose kid he is when you see a picture of him.
Oh yeah, he's spitting it, especially when he's got the beard going.
When he has his beard going and stuff, yeah. So yeah, I thought that was cool because I think I read Heart-Shaped Box before I knew, or I had just found out that he was Stephen King's son. But I think I might have read it before because a buddy of mine let me borrow it. And I was like, man, this is a really cool concept. I like this, It was really good. And it was kind of that classic tale, the music.
Well, it's funny because when I read it, to me there are two schools of supernatural tales. There's one where the ghost is never the antagonist, but merely it's supposed to be some sort of catalyst for a deeper mystery that your protagonist is supposed to be uncovering as the story goes by. And there's this other school of thought that says that ghosts can be the antagonists. And that was one of the first books I really read where the ghost was the antagonist that I really, really dug. Because I think Craddock is such a scary, creepy, figure anyway. Yeah.
And that's another one, man. I would love to see that made into a film, like a really well done hard R type film.
Oh yeah, and I know that he actually had it optioned at some point. I don't know if the option ran out by now or not, but it was supposed to be a movie by now.
I thought I remember hearing that at one point that they were working on it and it just never come to fruition or whatever, but I just love that. That to me could be such a cool movie. I'm really excited about Nosferatu, and while I've never read his Lock and Key comic series, Netflix just picked that up and ordered a whole season of it.
I know, I saw that. I'm not a big graphic novel fan anyway. I don't really read that stuff, so I feel like I'm missing out on something big. And part of me wants to go just hunt it down and read it, but it's just a matter of getting out of the house and finding time to do it.
As a Joe Hill fan, my friends that are fans of that graphic novel series are like, dude, it's amazing. They were like, it's really good, because most of them are also big readers too. So hearing that from them gives me confidence that it's going to be really awesome.
Right.
So,
I mean, no matter what, I'll check it out once it comes on to TV. I'll give it a good chance.
Sure. So. We're right about an hour point. So before you go, before we kind of have to wrap things up, I did want to. I was talking to you a little bit before we started about I do like to talk movies, and is there anything you've seen recently or really excited to see that's coming out?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I just watched A Quiet Place.
So good.
I'm kind of like behind the scenes, behind the times as far as getting to the theaters because of my job and the kids and everything. But I saw that on Netflix. Absolutely loved it.
I just rewatched that myself last week, and it's just as good the second time I watched it.
Oh yeah, monster movies always kick ass. What was the other one I saw? There's one, I think it might have been from Mexico, called Veronica. Is it Veronica? It is about this girl who is trying to channel her dead father through a Ouija board. And, they live with a mother and a couple siblings and everything. And, of course, they unleash some sort of demon.
Is that on Netflix?
I believe it is. I don't remember if I got that on Amazon Prime or Netflix, but it's really good. I thought it was fantastic.
I looked at that synopsis and thought about watching it, going through stuff.
Yeah. It's really cool. Let's see what else. I started watching Black Mirror, which is, I think, from BBC. It's a British show. And I watched the first 2 episodes of that, and I thought that was really good writing.
I haven't gotten into that one yet. I actually have been going back because I've never watched all the episodes, and it's been a long time since I've seen any of them. But I started rewatching the original Twilight Zone. So, because it's the whole series is on Netflix. So that has been when I come home from work and I'm having supper, I watch an episode of the Twilight Zone. That's what I've been doing for the past couple of weeks. I'm almost through the first season right now, so.
Oh, fantastic. See, my problem is that I'll binge watch things. If I find something that I really like, because I did that with the X-Files. I did not watch the X-Files while it was on the air, way back when it first came out. Then I sat down last winter and just watched the whole thing from start to finish. And, oh my God, some of them are really fantastic writing and really brilliant stories, and some of them are just not so good at all.
I watched the first couple seasons of the X-Files pretty religiously, and then I just stopped watching a lot of TV in general. So, that was probably 6 or 7 years ago. I went back and I watched all the episodes through season 7, and then I never finished it from there. So I still have the last 3 regular seasons, plus I watched part of the newer one that they rebooted, but I never finished it. I never watched the seasons of it.
See, I never even started. Once they brought in Robert Patrick. The actor's name. Robert Patrick they brought him in to replace Mulder. And from there, the storylines just got worse and worse, and I just kind of lost interest.
But the first...
But yeah, so it's fun to go back and find these shows. It's cool.
The X-Files. The Twilight Zone was way before my time, so... but I always used to catch episodes on, like, TBS and TNT and stuff when I was a kid. Or, what was the other station that used to play them? I think it was, like, WGN used to have them once in a while, the station out of Chicago. But I remember watching some of those as a kid, and I was always fascinated by them. And this was long before I was ever, like, a horror, really into horror or anything like that. But watching The Twilight Zone has really got me wanting to rewatch Amazing Stories that Steven Spielberg put out back in the 80s. Because I used to adore that show as a kid. And I don't know if there's actually any way to even view that anymore, if it's ever been put out on DVD or Blu-ray or streaming, but I really
have no
would like
idea.
to check that out.
There was a bunch of anthology shows, because I remember there's another one called Dark Room, which was hosted by James Coburn, and that was a really good anthology show.
You had Tales from
the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt. There's
one of those,
Go ahead.
Either Tales from the Dark Side or Tales from the Crypt. One or both of those is getting rebooted very soon, and I believe...
Well, I heard it was Tales from the Crypt, and I heard that M. Night Shyamalan was supposed to be doing that, but I've also heard that the contract fell through, so it's either on the back burner or totally terminated. I don't know.
There was supposed to be something on Shudder with it, and I think it was Shudder, and they were going to have, all these different horror directors and stuff coming in to direct episodes, which I can't remember if that's what they did with the original or not. I do remember episodes of that. One in particular with Keanu Reeves as a logger, and he becomes blind, and he ends up, like, his wife gets put inside a hollow tree, and then he ends up, like, cutting her in half.
Oh, my God.
It was bonkers, man. It was, like, a really young Keanu Reeves, too, like, before he was Keanu Reeves,
Yeah. Let's see if there's any others that stand out. Because I remember Masters of Horror was a really good deal when that came out. And there was some really good episodes in that.
Those, but I really need to, because a lot of my favorite directors, like ever, are a part of that. John Carpenter, Dario
yeah.
Argento,
Toby Hooper.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Have you seen the trailer for The Meg yet?
The big shark one. Yeah, I have seen it. Yes.
Excited to go see that. I have been. This will be the fourth time I've been to a movie in like the last, or third time I've been to a movie in like the last 2 weeks. Anybody that knows me, I only go to the theater about 4 or 5 times a year. so
yeah, I'm the same.
I have to be really excited usually to go to the theater because I just don't like dealing with idiots in the crowd, and it ruins the experience half the time. So, but I'm really excited for The Meg. There's also a movie.
The Godzilla, the new Godzilla movie looks really good. That's the one I'm in love with right now.
When they show Mothra, I was just like, wow. There's also kind of, well, I don't think it's really a horror so much as it's a comedy, but it kind of makes me think of an old Peter Jackson movie called Meet the Feebles. Is a movie called The Happy Time Murders.
Oh, that looks great! I want to see that too. Oh, that looks like so much fun.
Be a absolute wacky blast, and it looks like it.
I knew when the Sesame Street people were trying to fight them in court that it was going to be big.
Have you ever seen Peter Jackson's Meet the Feebles?
No, I haven't.
I'm assuming you know who Peter Jackson is.
I know who. Yeah, he did. Was he one who did Dead Alive?
Dead Alive, Bad Taste.
Yeah.
All those, but he put up.
The Bad King Kong movie.
And, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbits. Something Engines movie that's coming out that actually looks really cool. Kind of a steampunky type thing. He did a movie called Meet the Feebles. And it's done with puppets. It's kind of like a Muppets or Sesame Street type thing. And it is the most ridiculously perverted and gory and just messed up thing you will ever see.
Yeah, that immediately goes on my list.
It's so wonderfully awesome. But it's one of those things you're gonna watch and just be like, what the fuck?
What the hell did I just watch?
What is this? My brain hurts, but at the same time, that was amazing, type thing. So track that down if you can find it and watch it. You will, I think, if you like that wacky weird shit like that, it's definitely a great one to see. I'm very excited.
The one I'm holding out for, Guillermo del Toro was supposed to be doing a version of At the Mountains of Madness, and it's been. Is it going to come through?
After the success of Shape of Water, everybody's pretty much like, here, you do whatever the hell you want. Shape of Water was the commercial success I think that he really needed to give him the not just commercial, but it was also the critical success. While he's always been an amazing director, he is one of the...
Yeah, Devil's Backbone, Pan's Labyrinth, all those, everything he's done is really, really good. I like him.
He has got an amazing eye for just gorgeous everything.
Yeah. And plus the storytelling sensibilities. He tells really good stories.
He's very much, to me, a modern fable teller, like a classic fable teller. And, I don't rate movies 10 out of 10 too often, and I'm probably not, maybe a popular opinion, but I gave Shape of Water a 10 out of 10, and I hardly ever give a movie a 10 out of 10. Like, I have to be pretty blown away and wowed by something because at its core, it's a monster movie and it's a love story and there's some weird shit that happens in that movie, but there's so many little beautiful subtle things in that if you pay attention, it just makes the hair on my arms stand up when I was watching it. I just was like, wow,
I was truly shocked that he won the Academy Award, though. That was out of the blue. I was like, there's no way he's going to win the award for this. And when they announced his name, I couldn't get over it.
I was so happy for him because he seems like somebody I'd want to hang out with. Like, he seems just like a fun dude. Like, I kind of want to hang out with and talk, anything like artistic related about, movies and books, and because he seems very articulate, and well versed in that type of stuff. Because he's a great storyteller, he's just fantastic with that. But and that's supposed to be coming out. So after Shape of Water had so much success, he's been trying to get that made, trying to get it made, and nothing.
And that's the thing that makes me so mad at Hollywood, because another great filmmaker, Terry Gilliam, just put out the whole Don Quixote movie, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, and the amount of trouble he went through just to get that made and produced is mind-boggling. I mean, like, how difficult is it just to finance a movie, let these filmmakers do their thing, and let the finished work speak for itself.
It's like anything. It's so weird, though, man. It blows my mind sometimes, some of the stuff that gets made, and yet there's other stuff out there that is, would be 1,000 times better that never gets made. I just don't understand the whole inner Hollywood workings.
It's all money. It's the reason they keep doing these shitty reboots of, like Nightmare on Elm Street and doing all these unnecessary sequels that don't really move the storyline any further than it was before. We don't need another Saw movie.
Although I will say I'm insanely excited for the new Halloween movie.
I'm on the fence about that. I saw the preview for that and I wasn't blown away. And I think a lot of it, too, has to do with the fact that they're just ignoring a lot of the sequels that already came out and just going right back to, like, this being a continuation from, like, the first two,
I can't remember if it's the first two or the first film. I think they even ignore the second one. But there's going to be nods. They said they're continuing the story that way, but there's also going to be some little nods to they're not completely disacknowledging the rest of them and their important place, in the whole mythos of the series, but they're kind of doing I don't want to say a soft reboot, but that's basically almost what it is.
And it's Jamie Lee Curtis, which is amazing. They got her back again. I can't believe she's hurting for money.
Oh, no, I think she can pretty much do or not do whatever she feels like, at this point. I'm very excited to see it because I love the Halloween movies. So, I'm, Friday the 13th, Halloween. Even if they're horrible, I still love them, type thing for me. Those are my favorite, like, those type of franchises and stuff. But I think we're seeing, especially film-wise, I think we're kind of starting to see these companies moving away from reboots and remakes more to, you have companies like A24 that are putting out A Quiet Place and Get Out, which is absolutely phenomenal.
I love Get Out. That was a great movie.
And Hereditary and all these.
I
missed it. I went to go see it in the theater. I was going to, and it went out of the theater pretty quick around where I am.
It may be on Amazon Prime or at least Amazon where you can go,
as soon as that's available,
which I might end up doing this weekend.
I will be watching it. But then you got,
me too.
M. Night's been having a kind of a big resurgence lately with Split.
Oh, yeah, because he's got the new
Glass coming out, which I cannot wait for that, because I just watched Split, because I was way behind, and I was just like, that was such a good movie. So Unbreakable is like one of my favorite movies of his, so that all this stuff ties together is just awesome. So you're starting to see kind of the original horror coming to the forefront again, and not just
you know something? You have Netflix to thank for that. You really do, because they started going after these other, projects that nobody knew about, that were, based on books and everything. The Handmaid's Tale getting remade is amazing. Because that was actually a movie came out with Robert Duvall years and years ago. And the fact that they redid it and is successful as it is enormously cool.
You even look at, like, Westworld. Westworld was a movie.
See, I haven't seen Westworld yet. That's another show I got to check out.
But, it was a movie from the 70s. It was, and which I didn't even know after I had watched, when I started watching it, that it had already was a movie from back in the day. But they're starting to do creative things with some old properties where it's not really even a reboot, it's just they're starting fresh. Because it's stuff most people, they're not popular.
Right, because you've had generations go by that didn't know.
I understand that, because there's always been a place for remakes in movies. It's happened for years. But it just seems like over the last 10 years, they were like rebooting and remaking stuff that was like 10, 15 years old. It's like, dude, you really don't need to do that, So, I have a weird love-hate relationship with remakes in general. So,
I'm the same.
I bitch about them constantly, but I love a lot of them at the same time. So,
well, did you watch it? Stephen King's It?
Good. So good.
It was good, but it's not the same material as in from the book. I mean, obviously they had to make changes to make it more updated, and they moved the story from the 60s to the 80s and everything. But they actually started messing around with the characters and the roles they play in the story, and I I think they did a disservice to the book when they did that, because I really love the book. And the good news is the book is always going to be there. You can always go back and rediscover the book and how much you love it.
And I've had this discussion before, especially as someone who just recently had something adapted from a story to a film. They're two different mediums and two different ways of telling a story. If you took it would have to be like a friggin' 20-hour miniseries in order to cover the whole thing and do it properly. You have to make changes in order to make it work for the medium.
And that's why his version of The Dark Tower was such an abysmal failure, is because they tried to tell too much story in one consolidated thing, that they messed up a lot of the storyline that made it such a great epic to begin with.
And this is something else, like I've talked to a few people about. I enjoyed the Dark Tower movie for what it was, but I've only read the first few books in the series. So I'm not as ingrained with it as, like, a lot of my friends, that's their favorite Stephen King work, is the Dark Tower series. So I found, noticing from an outsider looking in, the people that love that series hated the movie. The people that aren't as familiar with it liked it. I don't think it's a great movie by any means, but I thought it was serviceable and okay. You know, it was okay, but sadly they relied on the gimmick of having Idris Elba play Roland to begin with. I mean, that created such a controversy that it kind of diminished the story itself in favor of, hey, you know, this hot actor is going to play this role and everything. And unfortunately, I don't know how it, you know, what difference it made box office wise, how much, you know, people turned away that would have gone to see it otherwise. But I think just having that type of gimmick just is not healthy for the story they wanted to tell. No, I can see where you're coming from that perspective. I'm personally, like I said, I'm not so ingrained with the story that it really didn't make any difference to me having him as Roland, because I'm a huge fan of his anyway. So, you know, so it were story-wise, I thought it was okay, and I actually really liked Matthew McConaughey as the Man in Black. I thought he was really good.
Fine. He was fine.
But it's one of those things, and I think it happens too often. But like you said, and you're very much correct, and I think this is a good way to kind of end the show as far as this part of it goes. Is you know, even if you don't like a movie adaptation or vice versa, you still have that other version there to enjoy. You know, just because I don't like a remake, or I you know, doesn't dismiss the fact that there's still the original there to go and watch, or vice versa. And I think too often people get caught up in, well, this is tarnishing the legacy. No, it's not. That's not made for you. I feel that way very strongly about the new Star Wars movies. A lot of people bitch, well, they killed my childhood. No, dude, these movies aren't made for you. These are made for your kids. And when you go to a theater and you see a little kid that was your age when you discovered Star Wars, and they're just wide-eyed and in awe, that's what it's for. If you like it, that's awesome. But if you don't, it's not diminishing the original films. You know?
Well, and a lot, too, is exposed this really nasty gatekeeper mentality that these fans, you know, they think that they own this, and that's strictly for them, that they don't understand why all of a sudden you have a female lead, you know, where it was Luke Skywalker before, or, you know, why are these different, you know, characters that aren't exclusively white people?
It's for a new generation. The times have changed.
There is diversity in the cosmos, folks.
The times have changed, okay? Lando was not the only colored person in the entire galaxy. You know, and we, you know, I don't get into politics or any of that bullshit because I absolutely hate them and whatever. But societally, I think we're in a much more progressive place than we used to be. There's more opportunities to do this. There's more. It's a good thing, but with any sort of change comes backlash. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
So we're going to end on that. But before we stop, can you tell people where they can find your stuff and where they can check you out?
You can visit my author page on Amazon.com. Just look up Peter and Dudar. I have a presence on Facebook. I have an author page and my personal page. I am in the process of building my first professional website, so that should be debuting before the end of the year, hopefully sooner rather than later. And I'm on Twitter. You just look up Peter Dudar and you'll find me. And other than that, if you live in the state of Maine, just watch out for the Tuesday Mayhem Society and you'll probably see me.
So before, I really like to thank Peter for being on the show and hanging out and chatting with me. I had a great time. And man, it goes by quick. Like I always tell people, it does.
It really does. That flew right by.
Most of the time, it's like, holy crap, we've been already doing this for like an hour and 20 minutes or so. I'd like to thank my sponsor, the Maine Cannababes. Go to www.mainecannababes.com. They just started shooting some new pictures for this year's calendar, and I believe they're going to announce some of the causes that they will be donating the money from the proceeds of the calendar. And always there's some amazing resources about cannabis legislation and where you can find information and just everything to do with medical cannabis use and the good things about it and everything else. Just go to mainecannababes.com, and you can also look at some pictures of some very beautiful ladies that donate their time for this amazing cause.
Hooray, Cannababes.
All right. And so again, thank you, Peter, very much for being on. And I want to leave you kids
pleasure.
with this word of advice that I leave you with every week. Remember, kids, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, and I will see you sexy animals on the flip side.
It's intermission. Rise and stretch time. Time to refresh yourself and visit our snack bar. Got a yen for hot popcorn? Your favorite soft drinks are sparkling cold. The juicy Frank sizzling hot. There's delicious coffee, freshly brewed, and all kinds of ice cream and candy to tempt you. Showtime will be announced loud and clear to get you back to your car in time. So stretch your legs. Come to the snack bar now.
Thanks for listening to Average Joe's Drive-In. If you'd like to talk movies or contact the show, add our social media pages. You can add us on Facebook at Average Joe's Drive-In Podcast, on Twitter at TWJ Author, on Instagram at Thomas Washburn Jr. You can also hit up www.thomaswashburnjr.com for more information about the show and related links. If you'd like to support the show, you can buy TJ's books on Amazon. Just type in Thomas Washburn Jr. in the search. Books are available in Kindle and paperback formats. If you have Kindle Unlimited or Prime, you can read the books for free and money will be earned by the pages read. It doesn't cost you anything and it supports the show. Until next time, you've been listening to Average Joe's Drive-In.